I think it's about time I paint another Space Marine and dial the mood of the cave just right. Hello fellow Heroes of the Blue, and welcome to my channel, and also welcome to another episode of the Heavy Contrast Marine series. This is a series where I try to paint a Space Marine to the highest level possible using just contrast paints and highlights, and for this episode we are completely dressed in red because we are painting the angriest of the angriest Marines, the Wall Eaters. So, let's get cracking. As you can see, we're starting from a base coat of Wraithbone, and our first step will be to do a layer between a 1-to-1 mix of Flesh Tearers Red and Blood Angels Red. As always, I'm going section by section, and once I apply my layer, I take a look and see if there's anywhere where it's pulling where I don't want it, and I just take that away using a clean brush. With our red contrast now drying, before highlighting it, I want to clean up all the rubber bits in between his armor, just because this can be quite messy, and if I mess up I can tidy up using the highlights on the armor. So I'm taking Corax White and I'm doing a full layer over all the rubber rigid bits on his armor. So pick up all the joints, like this. And also any tubes that he might have. Like for example that one. With the Corax White now dry, I'm going to apply a layer of Rift Charger Grey over all those details. This will serve up as our first shade, darkening down the Corax White and also giving it a cool tint that will show through our next layer that will be on top of this, creating a very nice contrast to the bright red armor. The Rift Charger Grey is now dry, and I'm going to apply a layer of Black Templar over all those details. This will create our final black rubber look that will have that slight cold tint that will help us balance all that red. All our layers of contrast are now dry, and this is the perfect time to start highlighting all the armor. For this I'm going to use Wild Rider Red as my first highlight, and I will just do a very thin edge highlight with this. Quite simple, just pick up the edges, use the side of your brush if you can, and if you can't, just be careful and go slowly. You can use Wild Rider Red to correct any places where you went out with the Black Templar, like just there, in that joint. Highlights with what rather red are now done. Then I'm going to move into Tau Light Ochre, and I will do a smaller edge highlight this time with this. That highlight with Tau Light Ochre is now done, and for the last highlight on the red armor I'm going to use Angor Flesh, and this will be a very small dot highlight just in the very most prominent details. With that last highlight done, this red armor is looking the part, but it's a tad too clean and new looking for a common berserker, so I'm going to just weather it out as much as I see fit. And for this I'm going to start with Tau Light Ochre, and I'm thinning it down a bit. I don't want this too thick, and I will just start doing random marks. Try to do like stippling motions. With our armor now weathered, I'm going to take Rhinox hide, and again I'm thinning it down. This doesn't have to be pure Rhinox hide. At full strength we want just that, and again with the same stippling motion I'm going to put this Rhinox hide inside of the towelite ochre chips, and I will try to focus it to the upper parts of those chips. The key here is try to leave towelite ochre showing on the lower sections of each chip. With our chips now looking great, it's time to highlight them. And for this I'm going to do two things. First of all, with Baneblade Brown, I'm going to highlight the chips where they should have an edge highlight. For example, here, try to leave some Rhinox hide showing where the chip meets the other color on top that is supposed to be on top of it. I will just take this and do a very small highlight on the chip where it should have an edge highlight. And our last step for the red armor will be to take Angor Flesh and do a dot highlight on the biggest chips, on the corners of the biggest chips. Be very careful and try to do this as small as you possibly can. If you don't feel comfortable with this very small highlight, don't do it, but if you can, it will help integrate everything and create a better looking effect. With our red armor now done, I'm going to finish off all the rubber details. For this I'm going to take Fenrisian Grey and I will just do a highlight on each of the ridges. And to finish off all the rubber details, I'm going to do a small dots of Fulan Grey in the middle of each of our Fenrisian highlights. With our red armor and our rubber parts finished, I'm going to paint all the black details first, and for this I'm going to use a base coat of Mechanicus Standard Grey. I'm basically picking the casing on the weapons, and we'll also pick up with this all the leather details like the holsters and bags that he has. And of course his belts. Our layer of Mechanicus Standard Grey is now completely dry, and I also took the liberty to clean up with Quarax White all the rest of the details that won't be metallic. And my next step will be to apply a layer of Black Templar over all the black details. Be very careful around the red armor. We really don't want to mess up all the hard weathering work we just done. While the black tempera dries, I'm going to apply a layer of skeleton horde over the skulls on his armor. This mini in particular also happens to have teeth inside of the helmet, so I will paint it over those as well. With those 2 layers of contrast paints applied, I'm going to apply a third one over his cloth. This will be Agaro's Dunes, and I want this to look like a very dirty rag of cloth, so I think Agaro's Dunes fits very well. I have all those contrast layers drying and I want them really dry, and in the meantime I'm going to paint something fun. The world orb inside of the symbol of the world eaters, and for this I'm using Talatar blue. I'm now going to paint all the leather details, and I will use these colors just to paint the leather and not the black casings on the weapons. And for the first highlight I'm going to use Escaping Blight Dinge. I'm making a thick edge highlight with this. For a second highlight on the leather, I'm going to use a Stone Vermin Fur, and I will do a thin edge highlight all around our pieces. Try to place this edge highlight just inside our previous one of Escaping Blight Dinge. Also on top of that highlight, I'm going to do a bit of weathering on the leather, and for this I'm just doing random scratches and dots all over the surface with this Storm Vermin Fur. And for our next highlight on the leather pieces, I'm going to use Baneblade Brown. And again, I'm doing a thin edge highlight, but this time I'm going to concentrate it towards the corners of the leather pieces. And I will also keep adding a bit of weathering here and there. For the last highlight on the leather, I'm going to use a Shabti bone, and I will just do very small dots of the Shabti bone just in the very corners. And also pick up in all of the major scratches on the leather, just like that. With the black leather now done, I'm going to finish his bone details. For this I'm just going to take pure white and I'm just going to do an edge highlight on them. With the bone details done, I'm going to paint his cloth rack. For this, I'm going to highlight it using sharp tip bone. And finally, I'm just going to take pure white and do a very thin extreme edge highlight, just picking up the corners here. And now to finish off his cloth, I'm going to make it dirty. For this, I'm taking wildwood and I'm filling it down using water to a kind of wash consistency, and I will just dab it into the bottom of the rack like that, like stippling motion. And I'm using water because I actually want this to look messy and to hopefully it dries, leaving coffee stains. I actually want that. Not sure if you can see it, but it actually has worked and we have quite some coffee stain in there. That is perfect because I want this to look dirty. So I'm doing a second one, this time just covering less area and just trying to leave this again like that, like a dirty cloth. With those details painted, I'm going to take a 1-to-1 mix of agarest dunes and warp lightning, and I'm going to apply this over the continents on the wall orb here. Now I'm going to take pure warp lightning and I'm going to paint his eyes. I'm starting from the front and I'm finishing the brush stroke towards the back because I want more warp lightning deposited there. Just like that. You may have to reinforce it like I did there. I'm going to do the second layer once it first dries, but I'm just putting this towards the very back end of his eyes, just like that. And I'm going to take very thin down sharp tip bone. I'm going to show how thin this is here, super thin, and I'm going to apply a highlight with this on the wall orb very carefully. Once that first pass is done, I'm taking sharp tip bone again and I'm reinforcing that, just highlighting the continents. I'm now doing the same with dawn yellow. It needs a bit more water than that. Now it is perfect. I'm going to take this dawn yellow and I'm going to highlight the front of his eyes. Be very careful, we just want to pick a line towards the front of the eye. Just like that. With all those details out of the way, it is just one thing that I have base coated that is left to paint, and that is his weapons. For this I'm going to take Thunderhawk Blue, and I will do an edge highlight of Thunderhawk Blue on all those details. Try to make this highlight thin, as thin as you can. For our next highlight on the black weapons, I'm going to use Fenrisian Grey, and I will just do the same thin edge highlight, but just concentrating it towards the corners of each shape. Also picking any rivets. And finally, for a last highlight on the black casing on his weapons, I'm going to do dots of Ulthuan grey just in the very corners and all the rivets. With all the non-metallic details finished, it's time to just tackle the trim, and for this I'm going to use a mix of 1 part Balthasar gold and 1 part Retributor armor. And I'm just going to paint the trim with this. And while I'm base coating those details, I'm also going to paint all the steel details using Iron Hand steel. This of course includes the blades of the chain swords and chain axe, as well as, for example, the grill inside of here. And just to make it a bit different, I'm going to paint with steel this Chaos Star hanging from his belt. With all our metallics now base coated, it's time to shade them, and I'm going to shade them both at the same time, and for this I'm going to use a mix of 1 part Wildwood and 4 parts Contrast Medium. And again I'm going to apply this over all my metallics. That is the steel and the brass. With that wash dry, it's time to finish off our model. First of all, I'm going to do a highlight over all the bronze details using a Skull Crusher brush. This will be a fairly heavy highlight. And once we have all that highlight done, if you don't mind, I will take the liberty to escape doing everything before jumping into the next step. I'm going to take Stonehold Silver and highlight both the brass details, just doing a thin edge highlight with this. And I will also highlight the steel details. And with those 2 last colors painted and the rim of the base is still drying, this angry boy is finished, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. I always have a lot of fun when I try new things, and this is the first time I tried doing chips on an armor, and it was a great learning experience. So guys, I really hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye! Do you like my videos and want to help me make them? Well, there's several ways you can do that. You can follow me on social media. You have the links to all my social media in the description below. You can also check all my affiliate links in the pinned comment of this video. Use those links in your next hobby purchase and help me without any additional cost to you. I also have merch that you can see just below this video or in the shop tab of my channel. But the most importantly, there is Patreon and channel members. You have the link to my Patreon in the description below and in the pinned comment of the video, or if you prefer, you can just click the join button just below this video. Patreon and channel members help me do all the cool projects that I want to make and helps me improve the quality of my videos. Don't be afraid, no content will ever be hidden behind a paywall, but it's a nice way to help me and you will get something back for your generosity. As I said guys, thank you very much for watching, and a special thank you And a special thank you to Gerald Moore, Ben Morin, Christophe Moret, Joshua Bohannon, Beldrain, Ryan Mann, Michael Boye, Victor Domen, Vilkas Ward, GeForce, Patrick Ketsitis, Kevin Sullers, Gareth Smith, Richard Ketkowski, Notius Maximus, Leonard Lindemann, Eldrick Edge, Arondel, Mark Jarvis, Jonathan Ekelund, Dr. B, Manuel Pilela, Andrew Palka, JT Butler, Kieran Umurthail, Dominic Trevizo, Matteo De Rienzo, Alex Aguilakis, Josh Simpson, and Sasha Park for being the coolest persons in the planet. Be like these fine folk, join my Patreon, and take control.